นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Yeah, blessings, good evening to you all. It's normal when we practice meditation of any sort, really, where we're physically limiting ourselves by sitting still, or whether it's walking meditation, just walking back and forth, say. And we're bringing up mindfulness in the present moment, on the breath, or the body, or any other meditation object. As soon as we do that, then our mind starts to bring up all kinds of thoughts, memories, feelings, sensations. We start noticing things in our body that we weren't previously noticing. And it can be quite challenging, especially the first period of meditation. So if you're meditating now, you've been up through your day doing things, doing activities, and now when you come to put attention on an object, even though you have the best intention to bring up mindfulness with your breath, for instance, suddenly all kinds of other things are coming into your consciousness because you've been up through this day, and of course you have a whole lifetime spanning backwards for many years. All kinds of things start to pop into your mind. Some good, some maybe not so good. We have a lot of memories, and we have a lot of trains of thought that are easily stimulated. Maybe you just have one sensation in your body come up, and you think of that maybe it's a painful feeling, and it will bring up some feeling of discomfort, and that sets off a train of thought, a negative train of thought. You might say, oh, I'm sitting here, I feel tired, or I have some pain in my leg. It's always like that when I meditate. I always have this pain, or I always feel tired. And if we're not mindful at that point, straight away the trains of thought come in, take over the mind, and we start thinking about what's bad about our life, because one perception, one memory, one train of thought will tend to be a cause for something similar or linked, karmically linked, to come up. So you might start thinking, oh, I always have to deal with pain in my leg, or I always feel tired because I work so hard and I'm so busy and I have so many responsibilities, or because this happened or that happened, or I'm this kind of person or that kind of person, and off it goes. And if we haven't yet established mindfulness, very quickly the negativity can take over the mind, and off we go. And we've got plenty of detail, we've got memories, and we've got habits of mind that we've developed maybe over a whole lifetime. It's a bit like a fire. It starts, and if we're not on top of it straight away, then the mind falls into its old habit patterns, and we sit there thinking. Sometimes we change course, so you start to experience some negativity, and so we look for something to dampen the fire down, or to make us feel better, so we might start fantasizing about something we like. Maybe something that's sensual, something that brings us a feeling of pleasure that we can absorb into so that we can forget the unpleasant feeling or the negative thoughts that we've been caught into. We just look for something to distract ourselves. If you meditate regularly, you'll probably find this is a very common experience. You start with the best will, the best intention in the world to sit down, to meditate, to bring up mindfulness, but straight away you're caught by a mood, by a train of thought, and off the mind goes, running. And one thing leads to another. So maybe for a period of time the mind just runs with its fantasies, desires, looking for something good to interest itself, or the negativity, complaining, unhappy, miserable. These are such common experiences, I think everybody will know them. So what do? Well, we're really learning to rein the mind in, bring it in back to the breath. And gather the mind's energy, gather our mental energy, and to some extent our physical energy as well. We put physical energy into the posture if we're sitting or walking, into the walking meditation posture. And mentally we're gathering our energy together, using a meditation object just to bring the mind to one place, to bring up this one-pointed state of mind. So if we're quick enough, we may cut off a train of thought quite quickly. When you're sharp, you can do that. But sometimes, some emotional states are very strong, very powerful, and you find it hard to just cut it off, and it takes over. And you know somewhere in the back of your mind, you're trying to be mindful of the breath, and maybe for a few moments you're with the breath, but the emotional state is so strong, some kind of desire, liking something, the desire to fantasize about something, or the negativity, it's just so strong, your mind runs with it. And you may be half aware of the breath and sort of feel, I'm with the breath, but you're not really, because it's only the occasional in-breath or out-breath that you notice. And the rest of the time you're stuck with the details of whatever the running commentary is bringing up. So we have to find skillful ways to deal with that. Probably the most basic way is just sheer effort, patient effort, agreeing with yourself you're not going to get up or stop your meditation, whatever's going on in your mind, and you're going to sit through it or walk through it if you're walking meditation, and just work, bringing up effort to bring the mind back to the breath until you can do it. However important, however overwhelming those thoughts and emotions are, just by sheer effort, stubborn effort, you bring the mind back to the breath until gradually you wear out the desire to think and fantasize, or the negativity and the complaints. But there's other ways we use as well. One of the things you learn in meditation is what we call learning ubayas, skillful means. And that often is based around wisdom as well. Wisdom, wise reflection, and training the mind to see what's going on and have some strategies and some techniques and some reflections that you can turn to when the mind is caught into different trains of thought that are distracting you. One ubaya is just what we call adhitthana, determination. Determining to sit for a period of time, not get up, not move even. When your mind wants to move because you have a certain pain or sensation, maybe just telling yourself, I'm not going to move for a certain period of time, I'm going to sit through this. I'm going to sit here however my mind is, peaceful, not thinking a lot, thinking a little, whatever's going on, I'm just going to sit here. Sometimes thinking of the Buddha or teachers gives us the strength of mind to make a determination, to say, I'm going to complete what I've set out to do. I'm going to sit meditation for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever the period of time is. And whatever happens, I'm just going to sit with it. So the determination of mind is a very powerful quality. And we all have it, and we can be determined when there's a real need. So one thing that will support determination of mind is seeing the need to train your mind, seeing the suffering that comes when the mind is not trained, when it's all over the place, the kinds of states of stress, suffering that we fall into, seeing the harm of them, seeing the unhappiness that can bring you, and then you get the strength to say, I'm really going to work with my mind today. I'm going to do it. Let's do it, let's succeed. So determination is a thing that I think most meditators have used and have developed. But that's not the only method or strategy you can use, or the only skillful means. And we can also bring up a lot of wisdom teachings to deal with states of mind. That reflection on the uncertainty of the mind, another thought coming up, taking over, another memory, another fantasy. Where's this going to lead me? You're questioning the very thought that you're having, questioning the mood that you're experiencing. Where is this leading me? Is this leading me to any real knowledge and understanding? Is it leading to any real peace? Questioning our experience can be quite fruitful as you meditate. Challenging your own thoughts. So you have to have enough awareness to challenge the thought that is taking over your mind. So it's almost like a contradiction, but still we can learn this, how to do this, how to question what is going on. Do I really believe it? Do I believe this thought that's taking over the mind, or is it just a string of words and ideas or images, trying to get away from some unpleasant experience or trying to find some pleasant experience? Just question it and say, is this really useful to me? Where is this going? What is this bringing me? So you undermine it, undermine the strength of that particular train of thought or mood, and bring your mind back to the breath. And where can you go? You can ask yourself, where can you go? You can go all around the world in your mind. You can think of other countries, other people, other kinds of existence, all kinds of things in the future, things in the past. But where can you really go? It's all just mental proliferation that eventually will tire you out and not bring you much. So question it and see the uncertainty of it, the lack of wisdom in it, and bring your mind back to the present moment, to the breath or whatever meditation object you're using, by questioning your own thoughts, seeing the uncertainty of them. Or another way is to bring up a thought, actually lead your mind. If you're struggling to stay with your usual meditation object, you maybe have to introduce something that's a little more absorbing, interesting to you to start with. We have to learn how to do that as well. As a skillful means, as a conscious practice, this isn't the same as just fantasizing, desiring things, letting your mind wander all over the place, but actually bringing up, trying something that holds your attention for a while. So you can even use images and knowledge that you already have stored in your memory. You say, today my meditation is not getting anywhere, I'm all over the place. So you consciously, deliberately bring up a theme and think it through for a while as a way to improve your mindfulness at a time when your mindfulness is weak. So you could even bring up a thought about the work that you do, if you work or study some subject, some information that you have in your mind. You bring it up. It could be related to the Dhamma, so a theme of Dhamma that you've thought about before that you know. Could be a chant or the theme of some chant, some recitation or a sutta. But now you're doing it in a meditative way. We call it discursive thinking, guided by mindfulness, guided in a deliberate way, just to train your mind to see itself and to use the restlessness of the thinking mind directed to a particular theme of Dhamma, or even can be quite a worldly, ordinary, mundane kind of theme, but you're deliberately thinking it. So it could be something as simple as cooking a meal. I haven't cooked for 40 years, so perhaps it's not the best subject for me to talk about, but I know other people who cook. And so you could think at this moment for a little while, you've got to cook a meal. What ingredients do you use? What methods, techniques, cooking techniques will you use, will you employ to complete that meal? What's the amount of food you need? Thinking about how many people you're going to serve that meal to and so on. And you just think all around that simple task, simple activity of cooking, but in a meditative light, in a meditative way, where you're establishing mindfulness, bringing up a set of information, thinking it through from start to finish. And if your mind strays from that, you have to bring it back to that theme. So it's just the same as breath meditation, but you may find the breath or some other normal meditation object is beyond you sometimes. Your mindfulness is too weak, it won't stay with that meditation object. So what do? Well, you bring up one of these other more mundane, ordinary themes and think it through, stick with it for a while. If you're a gardener, you think about the gardening you have to do, the tasks you have to do. You want to plant a flower bed, or you have to weed the garden or cut the grass or something. How do you do that job? What's the goal? Where do you start? Where do you finish? Or it could be cooking a meal, or it could be a job of work that you do, that you have to complete, tasks that you have to complete, and you just put your mind on that as a meditation, as a way to settle the mind at a time when it's really struggling all over the place. Of course, you can think of the Dhamma as well, so you remember Dhamma teachings and stories, and remember teachers, teachings as well. You can do that. But it could also be something very ordinary that you have at your disposal. It's in your mind already, that information. But at this moment, you're not judging yourself, and you're not looking for anything from that information. You're simply turning it over in your mind to gain mindfulness, to bring your mind to the present moment, bring it more under your control. You might do that, say, for 15 minutes, for example. Your mind is all over the place, so the normal meditation is not working. What do? You bring up some information, you think it through. If you go to a job, you're an accountant, or you're a nurse, or you're a doctor, or you're a mechanic, or you're a builder, whatever walk of life you're involved with, you can think of some of the tasks that you have to do that you know, but you think them through. If you're a monk, you learn things this way. Ajahn Chah said he learnt to sew robes by thinking it through in his meditation, visualizing the robe that he had to sew, working out the lines of sewing that he would have to do, the turns, the corners, in order to complete that robe. He did it all in his mind first as a meditation. And sometimes we can do this as a way of training our mind, thinking through something from start to finish until you understand it and you know it. And at the same time, you're calming your mind down. You're restraining the mind by bringing it to one theme, not letting it run all over the place. You're giving it work to do, but it's under your control, or it's becoming under your control. And this is a valid way of practice too, and can bring you to a more wholesome state by training what we call vitakka vichara, the first two factors of samadhi. Initial and sustained application of mind. So you put your mind on an object and then you sustain it, you keep it there. You're evaluating, you're thinking it through, you're understanding that particular thing. So it could be cooking a meal, it could be writing something, it could be fixing an engine, it could be anything. But you're training your vitakka vichara in that particular theme rather than letting your mind run all over the place because you can't stay with your normal meditation. Could be even an act of dana. Like dana is part of our regular practice. So you're thinking how to do dana in a certain situation, how to help somebody, or what things you want to offer. If you want to do some dana with sangha, what to offer, what to prepare, how to do it, when to do it. You just think it through as a particular task. Or maybe there's someone in your life that you need to help or needs help, and you know that. So for a while you're developing, you might say, kindness, compassion, directed to that person. You're thinking, how can I help them? What form of help is suitable for that person? And the Buddha actually said we develop a lot of wisdom through dana by thinking how to do it effectively, do it well. When I was a young monk, I used to do a lot of nursing for Ajahn Chah, and I used to meditate like this. Sometimes you'd have to think through the various procedures and different tasks you would do to help Ajahn Chah. Like we used to do physiotherapy with him, do different physical movements to help keep his muscles alive and supple. So I'd meditate sometimes sitting with him when there was a free moment, and I'd think through what are the tasks I have to do, how to do that well, or how to prepare his medicine, or how to put the cushions. Like we used to spend a lot of time putting different cushions and pillows around his body to make sure his muscles weren't rubbing and getting bed sores. So I just think it through. So how to care for someone. Maybe you have a parent or a sick relative. How to care for them. What do they need? What food do they need? What medicine do they need? With Ajahn Chah, I used to have to think how to offer the food to him. Because when I began, I used to give him liquid food. The nuns in the monastery every day they would make up liquid food, bring it over to his kuti, and we'd receive it, and then we put it into syringes, large syringes with rubber ends. And when it was his mealtime, we insert the rubber end of the syringe into his mouth, and we'd have to just put one mouthful of liquid food into his mouth and help massage his neck so that he could swallow, so that he could use his muscles to swallow, because he still had to guide that, control that, to swallow. And he was gradually losing the ability to control his body, but he still had some strength, some ability to control his muscles. So it just massage. And sometimes one meal might take like half an hour or even an hour, a very long time, just to get the food in at a pace that he was comfortable with. Sometimes he didn't want to eat, he'd had enough, and he'd put his arm up and push you away, and you'd know, oh, that's enough, and you wouldn't want to force it. Occasionally a monk, I remember some monks, they weren't that mindful or sensitive to him, so they'd try and feed him, and he clearly didn't want to eat, so he'd push them away, and he'd even knock the syringe out of their hand, which would give them a kind of shock, and they become stuck at that moment. They couldn't continue. They'd have to stop because they were had so much respect and love for Ajahn Chah. They didn't want to do anything wrong, and they realized they'd made a mistake, so they'd become paralyzed for a moment. They couldn't carry on caring for him. So that was how I used to train myself sometimes in my meditation, just learn how to do the jobs of the tasks of looking after Ajahn Chah well, and try and think through what are the obstacles, what's the correct way to do something, what's the wrong way to do, what's the obstacle, what will make it successful. Bathing him was the same. I had to think it through how to bathe him properly. Just all the different aspects of caring for him. I'd think it through in my meditation, and that would bring some focus, and then I'd turn to the breath once I'd calm my mind, steady my mind. So you could do the same if you're caring for someone, you have a sick relative, you sit down and you begin your meditation thinking it through. What do I need to do for them? What's the duties, what's the responsibilities? And once you've done that successfully, then you move on to something more refined, like the breath. You go in a step-by-step process. To just jump from not having meditated, sit down, start meditating, go straight to the breath is often quite difficult, because the breath is a very subtle thing. Or the recitation of the word Buddha, or the contemplation of the body. To jump from a state of mind that is quite distracted straight into meditation, people find that hard. So you give your mind a task to think through as a way of steadying it, stabilizing it, bring up the factors of samadhi. We say vitaka vichara, or initial sustained application. And you find you can even absorb into quite an ordinary task, but just thinking it through, bringing up mindfulness, bringing mindfulness to bear on that task. And you're not expecting anything or judging yourself or expecting any great result from this practice, other than just training your mind to think something through mindfully. And it's like a preparation. We actually use the word preparation. We say barigama. Barigama means like preparatory object of mind. That can literally be anything. You probably heard the story, some different monks in the beginning of their practice, often they use very, very ordinary things that they would focus their mind on. If you can even focus your mind on something like a fruit, your favorite fruit, and you just keep thinking of it to settle the mind down. Or a candle flame. Ajahn Chah used to say, focus your mind on a candle flame, just to settle the mind. Or it could be a word, or a phrase. It could be something from the Pali language. You might have the phrase iti piso. Or it could be something more in your own language. In English, say, you have a phrase, let go, or it's not sure. And sometimes you experiment and see what phrase holds your attention. So to develop skillful means in meditation, sometimes you have to be a bit creative and experiment a little bit. But it's with a goal in mind. The goal is to bring your mind under control, develop mindfulness, and develop some wisdom and understanding. But you try a few different things to see what might work. So like sometimes you try one phrase and that doesn't work, doesn't grab you, so you try another phrase. And that phrase does work. And so you can stick with that from then on. So training the mind, you don't always just go by the textbook. You don't always go by what you've heard from other people or read in the textbook. Those are to give you ideas, but then you also have to see what works for yourself. Ajahn Chah used the phrase "it's not sure" quite a lot, because that helps to cut through a mind that is just restless, thinking a lot. It's not sure, it's not sure. You're thinking about something that seems very interesting, grabs your attention. Some desire, some fantasy, but it's not sure. And in the end, it's not sure wins out. It's not sure, it's not certain. It brings your mind back to the present moment. Then your mind doesn't want to grab hold of any other trains of thought because it's not sure. Where did it get you? It's not sure. Another method that people use is just deliberately thinking through whatever it is that's bugging you, holding your attention. You actually deliberately think it through. So like, say you're angry with something or upset about something, you really bring those thoughts up, think them through. I hate this. So you have some aspect. Somebody once came here, they said, every morning they go to work and they have the thought, I hate my job. I hate this person, there's some person that's bugging them, there's some tasks they have to do, I hate the pressure of having to finish this job by a certain time, there's so many things to do and I feel tired. They had all these different pet hates. So what they did was, in their meditation, they started to think it through very deliberately. The thought, I hate this, I hate that, I don't like this, I don't like that. And thinking it through took the sting out of it. Sometimes when you're just trying to stop your mind thinking about something, just trying to use force or just trying to, turn your mind off from that way of thinking, you can't do it. It's not strong enough. Your mindfulness is not strong enough. So then you turn it around, turn it on its head and say, okay, you want to think about something in a negative way, or I hate this person. Okay, think it through. Deliberately say, I hate them. I hope they disappear. I hope they fail. I hope they're destroyed, or whatever nasty thought you might have. Just deliberately think it through and then watch your mind. Maybe at that very moment you're repulsed by your own thinking and that will stop it. Maybe not. Maybe you continue thinking a bit more. Okay, you carry on thinking what you would like to do to this person you don't like, or what you would like to do to your job. Get rid of your job from your life. If I get rid of this, then my life will improve. Think it through until your mind is really clear on that way of thinking, and you know it and you see it, and maybe you have enough awareness to say, this is no good, this is suffering, this is not leading to anything, and your mind tires of holding on to that way of thinking. Especially if it's a kind of ugly, negative way of thinking, your mind can easily, when it sees it clearly, it just tires of it. This is no good, what's the point of thinking this? And so it drops it. And if you're mindful at that moment when you drop the negative thought, it's like you're free from it. You've learned something at that point. And maybe, certainly in that meditation session, you won't pick it up again. And maybe the next time, another day, you start to pick it up again. You've seen it before, you've known it before, you've thought it through enough. You don't want to think like that anymore because you deliberately thought it through before, to the point where you're just fed up with that way of thinking. Enough. Probably the hardest one of all to do that with is desire, sense desire. If you have sense desire, it's enticing. It makes you want to indulge, makes you want to fantasize, think it through. If it's visual, you want to have the visual image and absorb into the visual image. You want to think through all the details. People have told me before, they've been meditating and their mind is just all over the place. They start thinking, say, of food, something very ordinary like food. And they can almost taste the food in their mouth, even though it's just a fantasy. The mind, it maybe even gets to the point where they have saliva in their mouth. It's become so real. So sometimes instead of struggling with it or getting upset with yourself for having all this sensual desire, as a deliberate, skillful means, as a deliberate action, you think it through and say, okay, how good is this? How much enjoyment will I get out of this? And you think through that thing, that fantasy, that desire, and then where does it go? It just ends, doesn't it? Because it's just thoughts. It's just a train of thought. There may be some pleasure with it, some feeling, but then it ends. You can't sustain it for very long, because nothing lasts in the mind, does it? It's gone, and it's like, oh, where did that get me? It was only so good. Sometimes our mind does it for itself. Our mind already introduces some new factor we didn't even think of in the beginning, and then you realize, oh, it's imperfect. The fantasy, the imaginary bit of pleasure, that thing that seemed so scintillating and interesting, it's just that much. It doesn't last. The pleasure fades, or there's some drawback that comes into the picture. You eat the meal, and you chew, and then the chewing, you chew and you bite your tongue, or you swallow the food, and then you get stomach ache, or even your own mind sometimes can introduce something imperfect into that fantasy. If you're imagining a person that you're in love with, and then you have the argument or the disagreement, and oh, that's wrong, and then that's wrong. Quite often the mind does it for itself without you even trying. So these might sound like a little bit not in the textbook way of practicing, but if you practice meditation regularly, you might understand what I mean, is that you can be a little bit creative with your mind, especially when it's not peaceful, and really look at what you're attaching to, the desire, the aversion. If it's sleepiness, sometimes you have to be creative and just do something different. Go and sit outside. If you're in a room, go and sit outside in the cold or in the fresh air. Open your eyes, turn the lights on, do something different than normal. And don't just give in to sleepiness in the same old way. Sometimes you have to really work at it to wake yourself up. We have to use our imagination a little bit to see what will work to wake ourselves up. Sit on a step or something that, if you're sleepy and you fall, you're going to hurt yourself a little bit, so you become there's more energy to stay awake, and there's more to be gained by staying awake. If you fall asleep, you're going to hurt yourself, you bang yourself, you knock yourself. So this is finding ubaya, skillful means to train your mind, and out of this you learn a lot about the mind, to learn to see the impermanent nature, the transient nature of moods, thoughts, mental states. And you learn from that. You recognize patterns of mind, you recognize the way your mind is, and all the time you're gaining a higher knowledge, a deeper sense of peace, or you could say happiness, the mind that sees the way conditions are, the sankharas, the mental formations of the mind. You're seeing the way they are, the way they come up, the way they pass away. They're impermanent, and what's impermanent is not self, and not really you, so they can be let go of. But you have to find the way to let go of them through your own efforts and through your own wisdom and through your own determination. A lot of meditation is about that, just learning to find ways to let go, to come back up to a place of stillness and understand your mind better, and not fall into the same old habits all the time, especially when they lead to suffering. The purpose of our meditation is to free us from suffering, from stress, from suffering. The only way you can really do that is to develop enough knowledge and awareness to see suffering and see what its cause is, and then abandon the cause. The reason we fall into states of suffering is because we don't see the cause, we don't abandon it, we just follow it out of habit. How much suffering have we had through our life? anger, fear, worry, frustrated desire. Over and over again we've experienced this. So now you're establishing more awareness and more understanding. Your mind starts to tire of falling into the same old suffering. So it doesn't grasp hold of the root causes of the suffering, what we call the craving and attachment, wanting and clinging. It doesn't go with it so much the more you practice. The word the Buddha used sometimes is viraga, disenchantment, sometimes nibbida, the weariness of falling into states of suffering, attaching to the things of the world, seeing through the illusion of pleasures, the illusions of attachment, seeing those things that we attach to don't really give us any kind of lasting pleasure, and they actually bring us suffering. You attach to something, when it fades, it wears out, you're suffering again. You're back to a mind that's hungry, wanting more. Whether it's food, clothes, cars, houses, the wealth of the world. Even if you've got a massive amount of wealth, it doesn't last. What you cling to and attach to doesn't last. It can't bring you lasting satisfaction. But as you're watching your mind, you're seeing that. So your mind gets weary, tired, starts to experience disenchantment, dispassion, doesn't want to follow the same old habit patterns of wanting and clinging, doesn't follow the same habit patterns of expectation, expecting the world to bring you lasting happiness. These are insights that come through watching the mind. They may come just occasionally, slowly, but this is where we liberate our mind from the causes of suffering. And it doesn't turn you into some kind of person that is just angry with the world. It's not the same. Disenchantment, weariness with the world is just knowing the way it is and not being deluded by it, not falling into the same old patterns of desire, wanting, clinging. Where it doesn't make you unhappy, it's quite the opposite. It makes you happy in a different way. It's a higher kind of happiness, a better kind of happiness, because it's what we call the transcendental happiness, or lokutara sukha. The mind that sees the way things are, knows the way things are, goes to a higher happiness, a happiness of stillness, not wanting, not being conditioned by endless wanting, craving, liking, disliking. The only way we can experience that is keep contemplating our experience of the mind, learning about it, understanding it better, freeing it up. So sometimes we have to be creative in our meditation, try different things, look at things from different ways. It's always with the aim to free ourselves from suffering, from stress, reduce the causes. That's one of the ways you assess how your meditation is going. Are you getting more stressed and more suffering more in your life? Or are you feeling more light and at ease in yourself? Are you more at ease in your body, more at ease in your mind? That's a sign that you're going in the right direction. If your mind is truly weary of the world, then it doesn't need so much to be happy, does it? It's easily content with what it has. It doesn't need to go out shopping all the time, buying new things. It doesn't need to be creating more wealth all the time. It has enough, has the feeling of it's enough. These are some of the signs that tell you that your meditation and your practice in general is going in the right direction. You have more inner contentment, more happiness of a kind that doesn't depend on external things. And it comes easily. If you practice like this, you become weary of your own cravings and attachment. Your mind is freed up. It frees up a lot of energy so you can help people more. You can do things for other people. You can serve the community, serve your family, serve total strangers. Doesn't matter. You're more free to help the world and give things back to the world. those people who have helped you, you can, out of gratitude, give things back to them because your mind is free. When we're still caught into craving and attachment, the mind is not free, so it's obsessed with itself. We tend to act in more selfish ways, self-centered ways. The mind that is weary of the world, it's free, so it can, you've got time, mental energy free to think about other people and how you might help them. If people around you are suffering, you might see ways to help them. What you've learned about your own mind, then you can apply to helping and assisting other people to understand their own minds as well. So it only leads to good things. It doesn't make you miserable, depressed, like they say. You meditate, you just become weary of the world, you just becoming depressed, unhappy, miserable individual. It's quite the opposite. Your mind becomes brighter, so you naturally have more kindness and compassion available for other beings. So tonight I'm just giving you a few pointers on the practice of meditation. And so maybe I'll leave the talk there, and there's some time left, we can answer some questions.